Guys, welcome back to ESENtaxa. Andrea Papito here. In this video, I'm going to explain you the IRPEF taxation in Italy in 2024. The new Italian budget law 2024 has been released, published, and those are the new Italian tax bracket on your individual income, on personal income in 2024. If you're new to this channel, I want to remind you that ESENtaxa talks about how to optimize your taxation if you want to move in a specific country, how to know in advance your amount of tax to pay, because our main service is to provide you a tax simulation and understand if the relocation in that country tax-wise makes sense or not. And we are the #1 channel that in English language explains you the Italian tax system, the Italian tax optimization, and help you to understand and improve your taxation when you live in that specific country. We also cover jurisdictions such as Portugal, Belgium, Albania, and Republic of San Marino. Now, in this specific video, I want to explain you first how the tax bracket system in Italy works in general nature. So it means that this table that I wrote is basically the percentage of taxes that you're going to pay if you receive an income of general nature, for example, foreign income, employee income, self-employed income, rental income, so any kind of income will flow in this tax bracket system, which is basically quite common all over the world. Now, Italy reduced a lot in 2024 the tax bracket. There are only three in 2024. The first one, the 23% tax bracket, has been enlarged up to 28,000 euros. It used to be 15,000. So this is the first big change, and it's also a tax cut. How it works, this system? It works in this way. Basically, the first 28,000 euro per year as income will be taxed at 23%. The second bracket starts from 28,000 up to 50,000 euro and will be taxed at 35%. And then from 50,000 euro onward will be taxed at 43%. It means that, be careful about this point, you're not going to be taxed at 43% on all your income if you reach this threshold. It means that always the first 28,000 will be subject to this percentage. The first slot always will be subject to this percentage, the second slot to this percentage, and from the third slot onward will be taxed at this percentage, which means that your real tax rate at the end of the IRPEF tax calculation will be a sort of average among those three percentages. This is the first concept that you have to keep in mind. Now, as you can see, you don't see any zero tax bracket. A lot of countries in the world, they have this kind of system. They have a zero tax bracket. So the first zero up to X amount, normally it's zero, and then the tax bracket starts. So Italy seems to not have this kind of things, so it doesn't look like so convenient. But there are a lot of things hidden that you're not aware of at the first time that we're going to explain in this video. So how can we squeeze then my taxes? So for example, the first case is the following. Italy grants you the famous detrazioni, which is basically a lot of elements that you can use to subtract your amount of tax to pay. Okay, for example, let's make a calculation. If we have zero, if we earn something like 15,000 euro, this means that whenever we have an amount of tax to pay coming from the average of these percentages, I don't know, can be 3,000 euro to pay at the end of the year, maybe because your income is in the first, some point here in the first tax bracket, I'm just giving an example, and this is the amount of tax to pay. In Italy, you can subtract this amount to pay with the famous detrazioni. For example, by default, if you're an employee, in 2024, you can subtract this amount of money with 1,955 euro. If your income is lower than 50,000. So in the first 50,000 euro, you will have this subtraction given by default. If your income is higher, for example, if it reaches 28,000 euro, of course, this is not gonna be anymore 1,955 euro, but will be maybe a little less, can be something like 800 euro, but you can subtract against 3,000. If you have your wife at your charge, you can add other 800 euro, something between 600 euro and 800 euro, at the top of this 800, which will be subtracted to 3,000 euro. If you have your child at your charge, you can add other 1,700 euro. These numbers change based on your income. So if your income is lower, this amount of money to subtract is higher. If your income is higher, this amount of money will be slowly a little bit lower, okay? Those are the detrazioni given by default. If you have your wife at your charge, your child at your charge, if you're an employee, and you also can receive some detrazioni by default if you are self-employed, of course, based on how much is your income. So there is a specific formula that we are not going to talk here because it's a complex formula that basically it gives you a proportion. Based on your income, we give you more detrazioni. And the detrazione is a subtraction that can be done against your amount of tax to pay, coming from the average, for example, 20%, 30%, which is the average of these three income based on your tax income at the end of the year, okay? So let's summarize again. For example, I can give you another example just to explain you a little bit more in details. Let's imagine I'm a freelancer. I have some expenses, business expenses. Those business expenses allows me to reduce my taxable income. So I pay for my laptop, I pay for my activity expenses. What remains is my profit. And against my profit, I pay my social contribution, taxes for my pension. What remains is what will be taxed under the IRPEF taxation system. And based on how much is my profit after the payment of my social contribution, this amount of money will flow into the IRPEF taxation and will give me an average of this percentage. Of course, for example, if my profit is 28,000, of course my calculations will be automatically 23. But if my income is somewhere in between these tax brackets, I have this average. Now, the average gives me in euro something to pay to the state. It's supposed to be my taxes, but in Italy you can also reduce this amount to pay with the detrazioni, which are the benefits given by default because you're an employee, because you have your wife at your charge, your child at your charge, and you can continue this list. In fact, indeed, we call it like detrazioni list. You can have other detrazioni which can be done through refurbish of your home, or can be received by the fact that you are purchased health medicines or health visits by your doctor. So Italy allows you to also deduct your expenses, but wait, you deduct against the amount of tax to pay and not against your taxable income. That's the big difference from the rest of the world. And once you have so many detrazioni, you might have this income completely vanished, completely removed because you reach zero, and then you don't pay any taxes at all, okay? So this is the first technique to reduce taxes with your IRPEF taxation system in Italy, okay? And now we're going to check the second technique. The second technique, when you especially, this is valid for everybody that lives in Italy, but if you're a new resident, what you can do, you can apply some tax benefit because you're new resident and you basically you fulfill certain requirements. And for example, we have the Forfait Regime 2024 that allows you to give a 50% deduction from your taxable income. So before apply the IRPEF taxation, 50% of your income is tax-free. Okay, so I repeat this concept. If you apply for the Forfait Regime in Italy 2024, wherever you move to Italy, 50% of your income will be tax-free, and only the half of it will flow in the IRPEF taxation. And then you can apply still the detrazioni on this reduced amount. Of course, if we can have a broad calculation, and if your professional income is only one, we can basically assume that if we have a 50% deduction on my income, my real effective IRPEF tax rate will be the half of it. So basically this will be 12.5%, this will be 17.5%, and this will be 21.5%, okay? And we have basically reduced by half the tax rate of my IRPEF, or the other way around. I first reduce by 50% my income and then apply the ordinary tax rate, which is the more effective calculation, because then you can also combine income from other source. So it will be more a correct calculation to reduce your 50%, and then what remains you calculate the IRPEF taxation 2024. There is also another thing. In 2024, the Forfait Regime works with a little bit more restricted criteria, and it's based on high qualified professionals. So it's not just one of the criteria is that you have to have a degree, but the other criteria that you have to respect is also that you have to have a precise profession to qualify for this regime. So you have to be a high qualified person you have to have a precise high-skilled profession listed in an official website of the Italian government. And here it's a matter of how well you describe your activity and what kind of proof you have to prove to the Italian tax agency that you worked with this activity before the relocation to Italy. So this is very important. So in 2024, these regimes are based on your profession. So we can check if you can apply for the expatriate regime with our eligibility test that we have in the description below the video. It's basically an online eligibility test that you can check, and based on that we can understand exactly if your profession makes sense for you or not, if it makes sense for apply for the expatriate regime. Keep in mind that we have other subset of profession in which you can squeeze your taxation down to 90%. What does it mean? It means that only 10% of your income will fall in the IRPEF taxation. So, and this is especially for teacher and researcher. If you have the proof that you worked in these two categories, wherever you are in the world, and you want to relocate to Italy, you can apply the expatriate regime at 90% deduction, which means that your taxable income will be 2.3%, 3.5%, and 4.3%, because 90% of your income will be tax-free. Okay, so these are the most evident and possible way to reduce your IRPEF taxation in 2024. We also have other tax regimes in Italy that are using not the IRPEF taxation system but flat tax systems in 2024, and we are going to examine them in a different video. What you have to remember in this video that the IRPEF taxation will be squeezed down even more in the future. But the plan of this government is the following: so reducing more this percentage and make it this tax bracket system simple as much as possible. But for the time being, those are the percentages. The detraction list is one way to reduce them. The expatriate regime system for the new resident is another way to reduce them, especially if you are a teacher researcher where you can get 90% deduction of your income. I hope you like this video. If you want to be always updated with Italian tax system and also other jurisdiction systems in Europe, let us know and subscribe the channel, notification bell and like button to help us grow as a channel. And I want to remind you that in the description below the video you have our email contact info@esentaxa.com if you want to write us. Also the link to our Calendly schedule call, in which you can basically either reserve with us a 20-minute call, a preliminary consultancy call, or 1-hour call with tax simulation, which is extremely important to help you to understand if the relocation in Italy tax-wise makes sense or not. And we can also help you to plan a correct tax strategy. And of course, for anything else, let us know and write a comment if you like this kind of video. Thank you, see you to the next video.